Imagine a time of greatness where powerful kings ruled with authority and divine wisdom. Amidst this era stands an incomparable figure, King Solomon. Known as the wisest monarch in the history of Israel, his fame extended beyond the borders of his kingdom. Solomon was admired not only for his impeccable judgment and immeasurable wealth, but also for his mysterious connection to the spiritual world. From a young age, Solomon was blessed with extraordinary wisdom, a gift granted directly by God. His ability to discern between good and evil became legendary, attracting kings, queens, and sages from distant lands seeking his counsel. But behind this image of an enlightened king lies a lesser-known side, shrouded in mysteries and dark legends. Among these mysteries is a story that echoes in scriptures and oral traditions: Solomon's involvement with supernatural entities. It is said that, to achieve certain goals, the king had to resort to forces that many still fear today. And it is this journey, where wisdom and darkness intersect, that we will explore. Prepare to dive into the enigmatic story of how King Solomon, in his quest to build the great Temple of Jerusalem, made contact with beings beyond human comprehension. Would all his wisdom protect him from the dangers lurking in the shadows? Or by seeking to control these forces, did he take a dangerous step into the unknown? This is the beginning of the fascinating and controversial story of King Solomon. 4 years after ascending to the throne of Israel, King Solomon makes a decision that would forever change the history of the Jewish people: to build the great Temple of Jerusalem, a place where God's name would be exalted and where the people could offer their sacred sacrifices. It would not be just any structure, but the most magnificent temple ever envisioned, symbolizing the eternal covenant between God and Israel. But this mission would not be easy. Despite all his wisdom, Solomon soon faces a dilemma that threatens to halt the construction. The scriptures, especially in the book of Exodus, establish an intriguing condition. For the temple to be truly sacred, iron must not be used in its construction. Iron, considered a metal of war and destruction, would profane the purity of the work intended for the Creator. Imagine the situation: a massive temple made of enormous stones, and Solomon forbidden from using the most common and effective tool to cut them. How could he raise such a monument without the use of sharp blades? The construction seemed impossible, and even the greatest engineers and craftsmen of his time were baffled. It was at this moment that Solomon began to recall the stories of old, the miraculous deeds that occurred during the time of Moses. Could there be a hidden solution in the pages of tradition? A mystical answer, perhaps, concealed in the scriptures or among divine mysteries? One thing was certain: Solomon was not willing to abandon his mission, and in his search for an answer, he would embark on a path that would bring him face to face with supernatural forces. The stage was set. The construction of the temple would not be merely a physical undertaking, but a spiritual journey filled with challenges and ancient secrets that would test the king's faith and wisdom. Faced with the seemingly insurmountable obstacle of building the great Temple of Jerusalem without the use of iron, King Solomon finds himself at an impasse. The grandeur of his mission is overshadowed by this challenge, but amidst his anguish, he recalls an ancient story that might hold the key to solving this dilemma. The story that comes to his mind is that of the great leader Moses, who centuries earlier faced a similar challenge when constructing the priestly breastplate. Moses too encountered an impossible task: fitting 12 precious stones into the breastplate without damaging the material, something that seemed unachievable by human techniques. But in that moment of need, God revealed to Moses a hidden secret: a small mysterious creature known as the shamir. The shamir was unlike anything ever seen before. It wasn't a tool, but a living creature, an insect with extraordinary abilities, capable of cutting through the hardest rocks with impeccable precision without breaking or damaging any material. It wasn't just a technical solution, it was a living miracle. This small being had the power to make perfect cuts, which was essential for fulfilling divine commands without the use of iron. Recalling this story, Solomon realizes that the shamir could be the solution to his own problem. If he could find this creature, the construction of the temple could continue without compromising the sanctity of the work. However, the shamir was as rare as it was powerful, and finding its location became the king's new objective. But how could he find this nearly mythical creature? For Solomon, the answer did not lie in the realms of men, but in the depths of the unknown, where supernatural forces resided. The king began to plan how he could obtain this creature, and in his quest, he would dangerously approach beings that did not belong to the world of the living. The search for the Shamir would not be merely a quest for a physical solution, but a dive into the mystical, at the border between the natural and the supernatural. Solomon knew that to obtain what he needed, he would have to venture into territories where human wisdom was not enough, and where the risks were as great as the rewards. The riddle was set. Solomon needed the legendary Shamir, but its location remained a mystery shrouded in legends. Even with all his wisdom, the king didn't know where to begin. That's when his advisors, the wise men of the court, presented him with a bold and terrifying suggestion. These sages, deeply versed in traditions and mysticism, told the king that there was only one way to find the Shamir. They suggested that if Solomon could capture and subdue demons, he could force them to reveal the creature's whereabouts. Demons, being spiritual and cunning beings, knew secrets beyond the reach of mortals. If anyone knew where to find the Shamir, it would be them. The idea was as dangerous as it was intriguing. Even for Solomon, a king with an open mind to spiritual realities, the proposal seemed risky. Dealing with demons was no game, and certainly not a task for the faint-hearted. But the construction of the temple was his top priority, and he knew that to fulfill his divine mission, he would need to go to extremes. And so, Solomon decided there was no other choice. He authorized the search for demons, believing this was the only chance to find the Shamir and proceed with the construction. The court began preparing the rituals and necessary means to capture these dark entities. But there was a problem. Among all the demons, the most powerful and knowledgeable were nearly impossible to control. The mission was underway. Benaiyahu, the fearless warrior chosen by Solomon, was preparing for the most daring task of his life, capturing Ashmedai, the king of demons. This was not an ordinary operation. It would involve both physical strength and spiritual wisdom, along with a good dose of cunning to confront such a powerful creature. Before setting out, Benaiyahu receives two sacred objects from King Solomon: a chain inscribed with the secret name of God composed of 72 letters, and a ring similarly engraved with the divine name. These items were not mere talismans. They carried celestial authority, capable of subduing even the darkest forces. Solomon knew that without these artifacts, the mission to capture Ashmedai would be impossible. With everything ready, Benaiyahu heads toward Ashmedai's hideout, which, according to reports, was deep within a distant mountain, in a desolate and uninhabited place. There, the king of demons kept a secret reservoir of water, guarded with great care. Ashmedai was meticulous. He knew that the purity of this water was vital to him, and he kept the location isolated and untouched by any human. Benaiyahu, aware of the importance of this detail, decides to strike precisely where Ashmedai is most vulnerable. He secretly drains the water reservoir and fills it with wine instead. He knew that, as powerful and cunning as Ashmedai was, he still had physical needs, and his thirst would ultimately be his downfall. Although the demon was well aware of the dangers of becoming intoxicated, extreme thirst would lead him to make a fatal mistake. When Ashmedai finally returns to his refuge, he finds only the wine. Reluctant and fully aware of the risk, he resists as much as he can, but his thirst consumes him. Upon drinking the wine, he succumbs to its intoxicating effects, becoming completely vulnerable. At that moment, while the demon is asleep and defenseless, Benaiyahu makes his move. With precision and speed, he throws the sacred chain over Ashmedai, instantly binding him. When Ashmedai awakens, he realizes what has happened. He feels the power of the name of God inscribed on the chain and knows that, no matter how strong he is, he cannot break it. To defy divine authority would be a transgression even the king of demons would not dare commit. Realizing he is truly captured, Ashmedai calms down and accepts his fate. Benaiyahu, with a mixture of relief and apprehension, begins the journey back to Jerusalem with Ashmedai in tow. But the journey would not be peaceful. As they cross deserts and mountains, the demon reveals his complex nature, performing mysterious and even benevolent acts that perplex the humans. Who exactly is Ashmedai? Is he merely an agent of chaos, or is there something deeper behind his actions? The capture of Ashmedai was only the beginning. The true test was yet to come, when the king of demons and the king of men would meet face to face in a duel of wisdom and power. Solomon sought not only the Shamir, but also answers to the mysteries of the spiritual world, answers that only someone like Ashmedai could provide. The stage was set for a confrontation that would transcend the boundaries of the physical and the spiritual, where the line between good and evil would become thinner than ever. The journey back to Jerusalem, with the fearsome Ashmedai in captivity, was far from a simple escort mission. On the contrary, it was a passage marked by mysteries and dark omens. Benayahu, with a steadfast heart and watchful eyes, led the king of demons, but the atmosphere around them was charged with invisible tensions. Something strange was happening, as if each of Ashmedai's steps resonated not just in the physical world, but also in the spiritual realm. As they crossed mountains and deserts, Ashmedai began to behave in puzzling ways. Seemingly harmless, he performed actions that left Benayahu perplexed and confused. At one point in the journey, they encountered a blind man wandering aimlessly, dangerously close to a cliff. Surprisingly, Ashmedai guided the man back to safety, saving him from a deadly fall. Why would the king of demons do this? Benayahu, attentive to every movement, mentally noted each detail. Further along, they arrived at a village where a wedding celebration was underway. As the guests rejoiced, Ashmedai paused and began to silently weep. His tears fell heavily, filled with a sorrow that no one could understand. At another moment, as they passed by a cobbler happily ordering a pair of shoes meant to last 7 years, Ashmedai let out a sarcastic laugh. And when they encountered a magician performing tricks for an impressed crowd, Ashmedai laughed even louder, as if he knew something that no one there could imagine. These cryptic reactions left Benayahu speechless. What could explain this mix of compassion, sadness, and mockery from an entity known for its evil and destruction? Solomon, with his wisdom, would surely decipher these signs, but for Benayahu, the situation seemed increasingly beyond his comprehension. The truth was that Ashmedai was not merely an evil being. He was a keeper of ancient and bitter truths, aware of secrets about fate and human frailties. His actions revealed a deeper understanding than simple notions of good and evil, a knowledge of the inevitability of life's tragedies, of the illusions and vanities of men. When they finally reached Jerusalem, Benayahu was exhausted, not just from the physical burden of the journey, but from the psychological weight of accompanying such a complex entity. It was clear that Ashmedai knew more than any human could grasp. His encounter with Solomon was drawing near, and the king, known for his wisdom, would now face someone whose vision of the world transcended the boundaries of human understanding. This encounter would not be merely a battle of intellect. It would be a confrontation between two ways of viewing the universe, one through the light of divine wisdom, the other through the shadows of spiritual insight. What Solomon would discover in speaking with Ashmedai could change not only the fate of the temple, but also his own perception of his role as king and servant of God. The moment of confrontation was about to arrive, and what was at stake was not only the secret of the Shamir, but also the very nature of power and control over the unknown. Finally, the long-awaited encounter takes place. In the heart of Jerusalem, Solomon, the wisest of all kings, finds himself face to face with Ashmedai, the feared king of demons. This is not merely a meeting between two powerful beings. It is a confrontation between two worlds, where celestial wisdom meets the cunning of the shadows. Solomon observes Ashmedai with sharp eyes and keen curiosity. He knows that this is no ordinary demon. Ashmedai possesses deep knowledge of the secrets of the universe, of human nature, and, most importantly, of spiritual mysteries that even the king does not fully comprehend. For Solomon, this encounter is not just about obtaining the Shamir. It is an opportunity to uncover the hidden layers of the spiritual world. However, before any revelations, Solomon wants to understand the enigmatic events that occurred during the journey to this moment. He questions Ashmedai, seeking explanations for each of the mysterious acts he witnessed. "Why did you help that blind man find his way?" Solomon asks firmly. Ashmedai, with a distant gaze, replies, "That blind man is a perfectly righteous person. A voice in the heavens proclaims him as such, and whoever helps him earns merit in the world to come. Even I, as the king of demons, respect justice." Intrigued, Solomon continues, And why did you weep at the wedding? Ashmedai lowers his gaze and responds in a somber tone. I saw the fate of that couple. In a month, the groom will die, and the bride will remain alone for 13 long years before finding solace again. Knowing the future and witnessing human tragedies before they happen, that is the curse I carry. Impressed, Solomon asks another question. And why did you laugh at that cobbler who ordered shoes to last 7 years? Ashmedai, with a sarcastic smile, replies, he was planning for years ahead, but he didn't know his life could end tomorrow. Humans are fascinating in their illusion of control over the future, as if they can predict or avoid what is to come. Finally, Solomon asks, and the magician? Why did you mock him? Ashmedai responds with disdain. He deceives people with simple tricks while ignoring the treasure buried beneath his own feet. He prides himself on mastering the hidden, yet is blind to the wealth lying invisible right before him. The irony is bitter. Solomon absorbs these answers, realizing that, despite being malevolent, Ashmedai possesses a unique perspective on destiny, human nature, and life's fragility. With these lessons in mind, Solomon decides to get straight to the point. Tell me where the shamir is. Ashmedai, now calmer, reveals what Solomon had long sought to know. The shamir is not under the control of any man or demon. It is guarded by a creature, a special bird that protects this small being in a hidden place. With the right instructions, you can capture it. But know that the price for this knowledge is high. Even after obtaining the answer he sought, Solomon cannot ignore the complexity of this exchange. Ashmedai is more than just a creature of darkness. He is a reflection of the contradictions and mysteries of the universe itself. And yet, Solomon senses that there is something more behind the demon's intentions. But the mission to capture the shamir was now within his reach. Solomon was one step closer to completing the construction of the Great Temple. However, he was also delving deeper into dangerous territories where wisdom and darkness often walk hand in hand. And as he neared victory, he also approached a fatal mistake that could cost him more than he imagined. The clash between the wisest man and the most cunning demon was just beginning. With the secret finally revealed by Ashmedai, Solomon now knew where and how to find the mysterious shamir. That small creature, capable of cutting stones without the need for tools, was the key to constructing the Great Temple of Jerusalem. But capturing it would not be a simple task. As Ashmedai had explained, the shamir was guarded by a special bird that carefully protected it in a hidden and difficult-to-reach location. Solomon, with his unwavering determination, followed Ashmedai's detailed instructions. He assembled his most skilled men, not for a battle, but for a mission requiring precision, ingenuity, and patience. The plan was to capture the shamir without causing any disturbance or breaking the delicate balance of the natural world. After days of preparation, Solomon and his men located the guardian bird in a remote canyon. The king, known for his wisdom in dealing with both men and creatures, understood that any direct approach could scare the bird away, potentially losing the shamir forever. The strategy involved a clever trap, distracting the bird with food while creating a perfect replica of its nest, allowing Solomon's men to remove the shamir without the bird noticing. The tension was palpable. The mission required absolute silence and calculated movements. Every sound, every breath was controlled to avoid disrupting the harmony of that delicate moment. When the shamir was finally removed from the nest and placed under Solomon's guard, a wave of relief and triumph swept through the men present. The legendary creature, whose existence many doubted, was now in the hands of the king. With the shamir in his possession, the construction of the Temple of Jerusalem advanced rapidly. The stones, which had once seemed impossible to cut without the use of iron, now took shape perfectly. Each block fit with millimeter precision, as if obeying a higher force. It was a miracle materialized before everyone's eyes. As the work progressed, Solomon's reputation as the greatest builder and spiritual leader of his time grew. He had achieved the impossible, erecting the great temple without breaking divine commandments, preserving the purity and sanctity of the project. For many, this accomplishment confirmed that Solomon indeed had a special connection with God, capable of uncovering mysteries no other man could. But while the temple rose in glory, something subtle and unsettling hung in the air. Ashmedai, now imprisoned in the dungeons of Jerusalem, waited patiently. His gaze, though bound by chains, held an enigmatic gleam. He knew that in revealing the secret of the Shamir, he had fulfilled his part. But within himself, he also knew that the king, in his relentless pursuit of power and control, was approaching a point of no return. Solomon had won this battle, but the game was far from over. The relationship between the king and the demon grew more tense and unpredictable. With each stone placed in the temple, the sense that something was being overlooked intensified, a price that perhaps even Solomon did not fully understand yet. The great temple of Jerusalem was nearing its completion, but what would come next would be an even greater test of the king's wisdom and strength. A test that could not be solved with ingenuity, but with discernment about what true power means and what is sacrificed in the relentless pursuit of it. The great temple of Jerusalem was finally complete, rising majestically as the ultimate symbol of Solomon's glory and the covenant between God and his people. The stones, perfectly cut by the legendary Shamir, were set without a single flaw, and Solomon's name echoed across the land as the wisest and most powerful king in history. But, as with every great triumph, success brought with it an invisible shadow. With the temple finished, the king turned his attention back to Ashmedai, still imprisoned in the dungeons, awaiting his fate. Solomon sensed that the demon was not merely a defeated creature, but rather an enigma, a dark mirror reflecting the king's own fears and ambitions. And it was in this atmosphere of mutual distrust that tragedy began to unfold. One day, driven by curiosity and confidence in his own wisdom, Solomon decided to question Ashmedai one last time. He wanted to know the extent of the king of demons' power. "Tell me, Ashmedai," Solomon asked, his gaze piercing, "what do you demons have that is superior to us humans? Where does your true power lie?" Ashmedai, with an enigmatic smile, replied, "As long as I am chained and you hold the ring with the name of God, I cannot show you my true power. But if you set me free, if you remove my chains and give me the chance, I will show you what we are truly capable of." These words echoed as a challenge in Solomon's mind. In his wisdom and confidence, he believed he could control the situation. Perhaps he wanted to prove his ultimate superiority over this cunning creature. Against all advice, Solomon gave in to the provocation. He removed Ashmedai's chains and, in a moment of self-assuredness, allowed the demon to be freed from his prison. It was a fatal mistake. In the blink of an eye, Ashmedai seized Solomon's sacred ring and, with a swift and precise gesture, swallowed it. In an instant, the power that kept the king in control was subverted. With the ring out of reach, Solomon lost his divine protection, and Ashmedai, revealing his true monstrous form, cast him out of the palace. In a mixture of brute strength and dark magic, the demon hurled Solomon miles away, far from his throne, his riches, and everything he had built. Stripped of his identity as king, Solomon wandered through the desert, a common man, desolate and unknown. Meanwhile, Ashmedai took on his form, disguising himself as Solomon and seizing control of the kingdom. To everyone, it seemed that the king continued to rule wisely from the throne. But in reality, it was Ashmedai now governing, manipulating the kingdom from behind a flawless mask. Solomon, helpless and without his power, was mocked by those he encountered on his path. "I am the true Solomon," he cried, but his words fell on deaf ears. People laughed, convinced that the real king was safe in the palace. Even the wise men and advisors doubted his identity, believing he had gone mad. The great king, who once dominated both the physical and spiritual worlds, was now reduced to a common man, without power and without the glory that once defined him. He would have to fight not only to reclaim his throne, but to rescue his own identity and restore the balance between good and evil. And so, Solomon began a journey of humility and redemption, learning firsthand just how fragile power is when too much trust is placed in one's own wisdom. The game between light and darkness was far from over, and the true test of his greatness was only beginning. Solomon, the king stripped of his glory, wandered through the desert as a common man, without a crown, without riches, and without the respect of his people. What was once the wisest of men now found himself lost, discredited, and humiliated. Each day was a struggle to survive, but the greatest challenge was enduring the pain of seeing his throne occupied by Ashmedai, the king of demons, who cunningly and cruelly masqueraded as him. Meanwhile, In the Palace of Jerusalem, Ashmedai ruled with a mix of diabolical intelligence and disguised tyranny. He maintained Solomon's appearance and mannerisms, deceiving everyone around him. But gradually, signs of his true nature began to emerge. The king's wives, suspicious, noticed strange behaviors. He ate and drank excessively, disregarding the laws of purity. Even the closest advisors began to sense that something was wrong, but fear kept them silent. At the same time, Solomon, now reduced to a shadow of who he once was, did not give up his quest to reclaim what he had lost. Desperate, he sought out the wise men of the great assembly, those who knew him deeply. Presenting himself before them, he cried out, "I am Solomon, the true king. The man you see on the throne is not me, but Ashmedai, the king of demons." At first, the wise men hesitated. How could they believe a man who seemed to have lost everything, even his sanity? But Solomon's determination and sincerity sparked doubt in them. They decided to investigate further. They went to Benaiahu, the warrior who had originally captured Ashmedai, and asked, "Has the king sought you recently?" The answer was no, which heightened their suspicions even more. Next, the wise men went to Solomon's wives. They confirmed that although he visited them, there was something profoundly different in his behavior. "He even lay with us during our periods of impurity," they said, something the real Solomon would never do, knowing and respecting the sacred laws. Convinced that something sinister was happening, the wise men gathered and decided to act. They created a new ring, inscribed with the powerful name of God, and prepared a chain with the 72 sacred letters. With these artifacts in hand, they gave Solomon the only weapon capable of restoring his power and reclaiming control of his kingdom. With the new ring and chain, Solomon returned to the palace. When Ashmedai saw him enter the gates, his sarcastic smile vanished. He recognized the sacred power and knew that his deception was about to end. In a moment of desperation, Ashmedai fled, disappearing into the shadows, for he knew he could not face the force of God's name again. Solomon reclaimed his throne, but the return to power was not without scars. Though he restored order, he never forgot the terror of losing everything to the forces he thought he could control. From that day on, his wisdom deepened, marked by humility and the constant fear that evil can hide where one least expects it. In his later years, Solomon lived surrounded by a circle of armed guards who protected him night and day. The scriptures, like the Song of Songs, mention these valiant men around his bed, always ready to defend him from the fear of the night. It was the fear that Ashmedai might return, a shadow that would accompany him until his last days. This story teaches us that no matter how powerful someone may be, no matter how wise or cunning, there are always forces beyond human control. True power lies not only in wisdom or strength, but in the ability to recognize one's own limits and to respect the balance between light and darkness. Solomon, the wisest king, learned this the hard way, and his legacy endures as a reminder that the pursuit of absolute control can lead us to face our own demons. And so ends the story of how the great King Solomon, even in his glory and power, was challenged by darkness, and in the end, emerged wiser, but also more cautious and aware of the fragilities that even the greatest of kings carry within themselves.